Marking the 30th anniversary of Seoul-Beijing diplomatic ties, the head of China's top legislator, Li Zhanshu, wrapped up his three-day trip to Seoul. There's been a great deal of attention on what he would say about North Korea's denuclearization and the global supply chains. So let's decipher what came out of this visit. We're joined by Professor Kim Byung-joo of the Hankuk University of Foreign Studies. Good morning, Professor Kim.
Good morning.
And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
It's, I think, worth pointing out Li Zhanshu's position. He is the third highest ranking official in China and considered to be one of the key aides to President Xi Jinping. How do we explain Li Zhanshu's position first?
Explaining political rank in China is always confusing and difficult because their political system is just simply different from what we are familiar with, liberal democracies.
Right.
So, interesting thing is, every time we have to remind, when we explain this, I mean, some public understands it, but the others don't understand. In China, in communist country, it's not the government or legislature, but it is the Communist Party that sits on the top of the country. So basically, the head of the party, particularly within the party, is the central Politburo is the key body, that's a supreme body. And when you look at who are the members of the standing committees of a Politburo of the Communist Party, you have a good idea about the so-called political rank. So if we take a look at it, the central Politburo of the China's Communist Party, of course, the rank number one is Xi Jinping. He is the head of the state, and then head of the Central Committee and the Politburo. And number two is a familiar name we've been hearing for years. Li Keqiang is the kind of like a Korean concept of prime minister and premier of the state council, and he sits as number two of the Politburo of the Communist Central Party. And the figure that we are talking about today, Li Zhanshu, is number three. He is the head of sort of like a legislature, if you will. He's the chair of National People's Congress. So National People's Congress is sort of like a National Assembly here. And he's the head of it, chair of the standing committee of the NPC, National People's Congress. So he's number three. So we have Xi Jinping, Li Keqiang, and Li Zhanshu, who visited Korea this time. And there are four other members of the Politburo, and so altogether 7 members of the standing committee, the Politburo of the Communist Party. That's where you want to look. The 7 highest people in the country, and again, Li Zhanshu is number 3 in that body.
I guess which makes sense because Li, from what I understand, was here at the invitation of South Korea's National Assembly Speaker. It's comparable. This visit, according to many headlines, makes Yi the most senior figure to travel outside China since the start of the pandemic. How does this recent 3-day visit compare to other recent records? For instance, when was the last time Li Zhanshu's predecessor visited South Korea, Professor Kim?
Right. And as you mentioned, he came here, Li Zhanshu came here as the head of legislature here. And it was a kind of like a return visit, if you will, of what happened last February. Last February, they had the Beijing Winter Olympic Games, and from Korea. At that time, head of the legislature here spoke the Speaker of National Assembly, Park Byung-seok, then. Now, Speaker of National Assembly is Kim Byung-joo, but Park Byung-seok, then as the Speaker of the National Assembly, he visited Beijing Winter Olympic Games. So Li Zhanshu's visit this time is the return visit, if you will. And so that's what's happening. And to answer your question, last time someone in Li Zhanshu's position visited here was 7 years ago. At that time, it's Zhang Dezhang, and Zhang Dezhang was Li Zhanshu's predecessor as the head of National People's Congress. So 7 years ago, that's quite a while ago, 2018 March. And in terms of other prominent figures visit, I mean, your first question about, where does Li Zhanshu stand in terms of political standing, it's kind of confusing once again to us. And I think that was a good question because we just had a back in May this year, we had the Wang Chisan visiting here. And Korean media was all saying, Wang Chisan, China's number 2 is visiting and so on. So those kind of coverages does not help our confusion here because we just went over the official rank of the political rank where Li Zhanshu is number 2. And when Korean media was saying number 2 in China, Wang Chisan, that's really confusing. But officially it is not. And Wang Chisan, it just happens to be unofficially one of the closest allies of Xi Jinping and supporter of Xi Jinping. And Wang Chisan used to be part of a Politburo for 5 years from 2012 and 2017. But officially now he's no longer a Politburo member. So even though his closeness to Xi Jinping is very significant, that confused us altogether. But Wang Chisan, again, he's the Secretary of Central Commission for, he was Secretary of Central Commission for Discipline and Inspection, which is very, very powerful at that time. Officially. And then this time, so describing Wang Chisan's visit in May was as number 2 of China was incorrect, but his official title still is Vice President of PRC. So in that sense, I guess it's justified when you say number 2. It's not real political power, but official rank, whatever, on the facade, Vice President PRC. So maybe I might have confused you even further, but what I'm saying is we had Wang Chisan as official number 2, but in real terms, political rank, he's not number 2. He was here in May this year. But 7 years ago, Li Zhanshu's predecessor, Zhang Dezhang, was here occupying the same official position. So difficult. But anyway, I did my best. I'll try next time.
No, Professor Kim, I think you definitely clarified. I guess it is confusing that sometimes it is left to the interpretation of some of the journalists. And as you said, I think most importantly, our political systems are so different.
Yes.
Without prior knowledge, it is difficult for us to even call out what is accurate and not. I thank you very much for clarifying those errors.
Thank you for generous understanding. Okay.
Let's also continue to talk about Li Zhanshu's most recent visit, this 3-day trip to Seoul. How was he received by the Korean government? I'm not quite sure if we can make comparisons to Nancy Pelosi's visit. What do the differences, if any, imply?
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House, so number 3 in the United States. So comparing that case with Li Zhanshu is a fair one. But however, the situation was very difficult. Nancy Pelosi, they're very different because Nancy Pelosi was flying out of Taiwan at that time. Extremely contentious, extremely controversial visit in Taipei. So Korean government for sure was kind of like at a loss in terms of how to deal with her visit. And Korean media this time was very busy comparing Pelosi's visit with Li Zhanshu's visit this time. Clear difference is when she was received at the airport, when Pelosi was coming here, there's no one from Korean government, high-level official. Korean government later offered an excuse that it was the United States that asked for, no one from high-level official position to be present from Korean government, but we're not exactly sure because when Pelosi, when Japan, after visiting Korea, it was Vice Secretary of Foreign Affairs there, Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs who received Pelosi. So, that explanation from Korean government doesn't make full sense, but, it just reflected Korea's, delicate balancing with regard to Taiwan case last time. Pelosi was met by Kim Byung-joo, Korea's Speaker of the House, her equivalent here. But with, President Yoon, she only had a telephone conversation because officially President Yoon was on vacation. But this time, Li Zhanshu's case, President Yoon met with him, and then, of course, Kim Byung-joo met with him as a counterpart at the airport. Li Zhanshu was received by Lee Kwang-jae. He's the General Secretary of the National Assembly. So this time, Li Zhanshu was received in full capacity, the overall protocol and everything. So indeed, there was a clear difference this time.
And it's always in the delicate differences, diplomacy, that we have to decipher, which is why the comparisons are being made to such detail. I also, it's hard not to notice this large-size economic policymaker group that Li Zhanshu brought with him. Perhaps easy to spot China's attempt to boost economic ties with Seoul. Who was amongst this group, and what do you think is the significance we see in this large delegation?
Yeah, when we say large delegation, we are talking about 66 very high-level officials from the government. And some friend was making a joke, well, China has lots of people, so whoever they bring, it has to be a big group. But I'm not sure that's the case or not. But interesting, this delegation led by Li Zhanshu was, first of all, it's not like again, once again, they have different system of government, but they're not technically Chinese executive branch of the government, but these high-level officials were all from National People's Congress, where Li Zhanshu is heading, and but still, these people who are heading their economic and foreign affairs committees separately, and the inspection committees, their levels were indeed ministerial levels. So they were talking about 4 ministerial level high official, and then 3 vice ministerial high official, together with about 60 or something government officials all together. So it was very, very interesting visit. And then when they actually visited the LG Science Park in Magok area in Seoul, we saw the full size of delegation. Not only 66 very high level officials, but altogether 80 of them. The entire delegation was, and then they included some other people from other sectors of China as well. But when they visited Magok, LG Science Park, they spent about an hour or two taking a look at LG's R&D facilities and so on. And it set an interesting contrast to what happened back in July when Janet Yellen visited, right? The Secretary of Treasury visited Magok Science Park at the same time. So kind of like a gesture of China and the United States trying to reach out Korea in terms of their efforts and counter efforts in dealing with global turmoil in terms of global supply chain issues. So it was kind of a symbolic and visibly interesting, case.
Many observers also agree that the Chinese government's comments on Korea had continued to exacerbate the Korean public sentiments towards China in recent years. So what do we see in terms of Li Zhanshu's words and deeds during his visit this time?
I think it's a critical question because when we talk about the bilateral relationship between China and Korea, Korean public sentiment is a key issue here because Korean public sentiment really sways Korean government stance and so on. So it's really critical for China to handle it well. A lot of advisors, commentators actually advise to China here. But this time, I think it's getting better, but picture is still mixed. On the positive side, for instance, when Li Zhanshu met with a former Speaker of the House, Park Byung-seok, who visited Beijing Winter Olympic Games, Park Byung-seok mentioned what happened on the Chinese side recently on the historical issues, their national museum, getting rid of, in their exhibition of Korean history, getting rid of any traces of Goguryeo and Balhae and so on. And Park Byung-seok mentioned it, and then Li Zhanshu said that's something that should not have happened. So coming out of China's side, wording that's pretty forthcoming, the way we see it. So that's relatively positive. And then there was no mentioning of Taiwan, so that's also kind of relatively positive. But then again, on the negative side, still when Li Zhanshu visited President Yoon, he strongly emphasized the THAAD issue. And when he met with his counterpart, Kim Jin-pyo, Speaker of National Assembly, he again mentioned THAAD. And of course, Korean public does not like that happening very much. And when, President Yoon invited Xi Jinping to visit Korea, there was no mentioning of it when it was reported in People's Daily in China. So that's kind of rude in a way, and I'm sure there is a Chinese stance behind it altogether. And Korean public don't see it in a positive light. It's like a Korean president's always visiting Beijing, but I mean, I'm going to put it in a rough way here in terms of how Korean public sees it. It's not delicate or, it's not really, refined. But when China hold back like this, they see this kind of image of Chinese emperor. Chinese emperor don't come to these ends of the world, corners of the world as easily. We sit here in the center and you guys come here. That kind of an image doesn't help in a way, So that's something China has to be sensitive about, but they haven't. So this time, Li Zhanshu's visit, to answer your question, the picture was mixed at best.
I always appreciate your last question that kind of ties the conversation together on the outlook and where we go forward. How would the high-level visits like this one this time help improve Seoul-Beijing ties? And what should Korea specifically keep in mind in pursuing high-profile diplomatic interactions with China? Because from where I stand, there seems to be this sort of tug-of-war between the two countries' leaders over who will visit whom first.
Right, exactly. And these high-level visits are really important in a way, but once again, as I said, there's this, delicate points, elements of arranging high-level visits, which I just already mentioned here. And so that's something we should keep in mind. So we shouldn't continuously, demand or ask for Xi Jinping's visit here in town. Rather, what Korea should do is overall, including high-level visits, overall, rather than what some people, the progressive side of Korean politics have mentioned, let's deal with China properly and we have to respect their power, blah blah. And I don't think it's the best way. Rather, the other side of the experts have been pointing out that this is a time where Korea can actually take full advantage of leveraging and balancing between between China and the United States, and toward China especially, show what Korea can do in terms of leveraging this, and then make China show their gesture of putting efforts in trying to improve Beijing-Seoul tie, rather than we showing our gesture too much of we care about this relationship so much, blah blah. Rather than that, somehow delicately maneuver so that China will show their gesture of putting their efforts and commitment in improving ties. And that will actually help Korean public improve their sentiment toward China, and that will ultimately help improving the relationship between the two countries. I think that point is quite no nonsense and makes a lot of good sense right there.
Thank you very much, Professor Kim. Insightful as always. Have a safe week, and we'll speak to you again next Monday.
Thank you very much.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.